care am ajuns atunci și pot să vă mărturisesc acum cu 2 zile înainte de predică o țineam în fiecare miercuri din săptămână.
Și ne-am întors încet. A fost foarte dureroasă întoarcerea noastră, n-a fost
Between my first period of imprisonment and the second period, there was no difference. The torture, the brutality was the same. For instance, in 1980, I was very sick in the hospital prison Gila.
But first of all, my name is Rosana Roncatto-Stoica. I had the undeserved privilege actually to be baptized by Father Gheorghe. I met him here in the US. He was granted political asylum by President Reagan. And President Bush actually was the vice president then. He went in person to negotiate for his release in Romania. He was declared the enemy #1 of Ceausescu. At the time, he endured 21 years of prison, 2 terms, with tortures that are way too gross for me to describe in here. What really got him in prison for the second time, when he saw atheism that was taking the youth in Romania, he was actually teaching seminary. This was after he came out of prison for the first time. So we're going to walk a journey with me here today. How do you move from a man to a priest, right? A man and priest onto a confessor. Because we hear so many times, right? Confessor X, what does it really mean to be a confessor for the Orthodox faith? So in the middle of a lot of oppression, there was one night alone. And this is all I learned after the fact. One night alone to spread horror in Romania. When the communists came to power, they went randomly into the houses and removed peasants, doctors, lawyers, and 26,000 people in one night. That is a tactic very well known, to spread fear. So people say, well, if those prisons, Gila, I'm going to show you the map of all of the gulags in Romania, and those things are happening around the world right now. You turn on the channels and you look at the news. Do you hear anything about that? If you see what is happening in Africa, children being decapitated in front of their parents. And what Father George did, was quite unique. He was, a man of short stature, but a giant of faith. And even Nasha Adriana, his wife, Preotasa Adriana Matushka is Preotasa in the Romanian. And by the way, I'm not Romanian, I'm Italian, right? But our journey, my journey with Father Gheorghe here in the US, it really transformed my life. And I'll tell you a little bit of how this happened. And Nasha Adriana told me that Nasha is a godmother. She's my baptism godmother, right? So this is from him, actually, my baptism cross. And what Nasha Adriana told me is when Father wrote his 7th sermon, and he said, Adriana, I know what is going to happen, when I deliver this talk. And she said that they were very, very afraid. He knew that he was probably going to be killed. And it was the most incredible story. In Radu Voda, in Bucharest, there are very tall walls. What happened is when he said, I cannot, even if it's going to cost my life, I cannot allow the youth of Romania to be corrupted by materialism. And in that second term, he was already a priest. He decided to actually become a priest during his first term. There were 9 years, and then the remainder totaling up to 21. This encompassing the second term, which was the most outrageous. And when I was looking after him when he had pancreatic cancer, he passed away here in the US. Then the doctors were looking and said, was he in construction? What kind of business was he? Because I said, why? And we were looking at his x-rays, and all of every single bone in his body was basically had been broken at once upon a time. And I will show you, I will start, this is just an opening vignette of the journey that we're going to be walking through. And I want to let you know that the impact that he had was not actually in Romania only. So when he delivered those 7 sermons, The secret police came. He was teaching French at the seminary of Radu Voda, downtown Bucharest. And there were thousands of youth coming and jumping over the walls to listen to him. When the secret police was actually walking, it still gives me goosebumps to think about that. And his courage, he was bold for the faith, for the Orthodox faith. And he was like a magnet. And I'll tell, before I go into the opening vignette here, I'll tell you a funny story of how I actually come to meet Father Gheorghe. It was President Bush's inaugurations. We were in the middle of Iraq. At the time, I was running the National Biodefense Program at the Pentagon. And those were very, very difficult times for us. I had not slept for just about 3 nights and 2 days straight. We were planning, and there were many bad things happening. And I was driving by Route 7 when you come, from the Pentagon, and it was around 11:30 p.m. And I didn't even remember. It was the day before Christmas. It was the 24th, and the streets were quite empty. And there comes this, I almost fell asleep. And there comes this man dressed up in black with a long beard, with a black sack behind him. And I slammed the brakes. I literally almost ran over him. And that little church where he used to serve, I was driving through Route 7 for almost 11 years. I never noticed that church before. And I really thought, oh my gosh, I just, and he got scared and he jumped backwards. And I said, oh my Lord, I killed a beggar. And I come out of the car very quickly. And I said, sir, are you okay? And let me take you to a hospital. Let's see, my apologies. I didn't even notice. And he said, no, I'm okay. I said, at least let me drive you to a shelter. It's cold, and he looks at me and said, no, I have a home. And he smiled, and I said, okay, then let me drive you home. And he said, okay, fair enough, because I want to make sure that he was okay. So he gets this huge construction, those black heavy duty, right, construction bags. He goes in there and he actually gets into the car, and he asked me to make a U-turn. We were right across from the church. He was coming from the Target parking lot, bringing Christmas decoration to the church. And I did not know that. So he comes in and he asked me to stop the car, and I stopped the car and I look around and said, well, I don't see a house, but I said, oh, that's a church. I said, he's truly a beggar, because beggars sometimes sleep at church, right? In Italy, they do that all the time. So he comes out of the car and he gets his bag, and I said, are you sure, sir? You don't need a shelter? He said, yeah, I'm 100% sure. So he pulls, reaches out to his pocket, gets a key, and to my surprise, opens the church door. And he looks at me, and it is quite incredible. And this is just one of the stories. He looks at me and he says, welcome home. And it was the first time that I actually saw an Orthodox church in my life. And I saw these icons like staring at me, and he went on and he said, I've been waiting for you. And I just heard him saying this sentence again when he was dying at the hospital. And when he told me, I said, Rosana, Maria, and he gave me the baptism name Maria. I was baptized on Christmas Day of 2005. And you're going to see a couple of pictures too. He never asked me to become Orthodox, nothing. And he was like full of life and joy, never complained about anything. You could talk to him about anything, medicine. The first time that they took him to prison, he was actually going to med school. But I think God wanted him to be really a physician of souls, right? Very different mission. And when he was dying, he said, I told you, Maria, that I was waiting for you. God, I've been through a lot of suffering, and God needed to send me help so that I wouldn't suffer too much during my final stage. But it's still, it was very transformative. And I used to come from the Pentagon in the evenings and talk to him about philosophy, theology, anything that you can imagine. He is absolutely brilliant. And anybody that would go to his home, even when he was terminal of pancreatic cancer, he was still driving food to the poor. He had this whole schema set up with the grocery stores. Instead of them trashing food, he would pick them up and before they expired and drive them everywhere. 8, 10 baptisms a day. People would go to his home like at 2, 3 in the morning, asking for advice. There was 1 year alone that he gave his entire year of wages to one of his parishioners that was going through a very hardship. He would do that without even thinking. That is the type of person, willing his sacrifice, like willing to sacrifice his own life to give a voice, to God. And one of the things for us to be very aware as well of is, because he always told me, that Maria, do you know, it worries me what is happening in the US, because the communism didn't arrive in Romania all of a sudden. He said it was little by little. And he said, do you know when everything started? When they removed God from school and they started rewriting books, rewriting history. But that, that brave man of little stature, really, really humble, to the very end. He would always stay in the back and invited until somebody, wait until somebody invited him to the front. His entire life was serving other people. So without further delay, this is just to give you an opening vignette. I will invite you to look at a movie. I got to go to some of the prisons. Unfortunately, some of the prisons, especially Aiud, which was the last prison that he went to in Romania, is still fully active. Some of them Pitești, they demolished it. And what they want to do, he was a part of the experiment. What they want to do was to create a new culture, and create a generational gap. They were rewarding kids for turning their parents, is your dad, mommy talking about the government? And there would be rewards that would be given to them. If they would ask, they actually asked him, to go and, hurt his family, hurt his wife, and you had to do it blindly. So that was the type of experiment that they were trying to do. And I'm going to show you some of the footages of the prisons. Also, I'm most thankful to, a colleague from Greece who actually got this footage and did a beautiful thing with it, my plain movie. And let me do that as the opening vignette. And then we jump into the presentation, okay? Bear with me. prison that you just saw is Jilava, seven levels underground, and very few escaped that prison alive. The bulk majority of the people who went in there died actually nameless. The folks in Ayud, the prison from Ayud, you're going to see a couple of pictures too. But they would just throw their bones to the, to the dogs. It's too unhuman to actually, even describe. So Jilava, that was the second term. You saw solitary prison. There was absolutely nothing. And what Father told me is he actually got to a point where he thought that he was losing his mind, a breaking point. And what God sent to save him was actually a cockroach. And he started talking with a cockroach. And he lost completely notion of the years, the days, and the beatings were daily. And that was one of the visions that he had. There was he used to celebrate liturgy with crumbs of bread, 2 portions, crumbs of bread twice a week. That's it. That was the food. Yeah, he was like a sack of bones. And I have a couple of books in here. Those are all books. The Monastery of Diaconist is doing a terrific job. I sent to them, everything that I had from here. I keep we keep sending it to them. But some of the icons, of the, the prisons and what happened in there. There are some pictures in here. I still cannot get through the whole book. It is really too gross. One of them is actually Father Gheorghe is in here too, depicted as an icon. That's how they are telling the stories of what happened. So feel free to take a look too. Most of what you see here is out of press. So I keep those as treasures. One day we're going to have a little museum, right, to display that. So let me get into the, into the presentation in here just to steer the discussions. I like when people participate. If you do have a question, please let me know. So feel free to interrupt me. Let's make this a dialogue. The whole concept in here, I would like for you to get to know Father Gheorghe like I knew him. He was a people person. And I was actually even telling Father earlier what he told me right before he passed away, right? It's like, Maria, what I'm going to miss the most is when you organized things and we got together in the basement. Can you believe, how can you think that? I said, Father, come on, do so. But he was a people person. He wanted to be where people were, like a magnet for the youth, this energetic person. And I hope that you're going to get to know him because we speak about people who have passed away like if they were gone. No, they just changed their address. Right? It's just a 2-hour permanent address. So I hope that he gets to touch your heart like he did mine, and thousands of people all over the world. That are in Australia and in France. They contact me from all over the world. So very good. So without further delay, let's get to the presentation in here. Okay, so you saw even in that clip, I think it was captured very well. Panahidas captured it very well. The journey that went, from man, that was his first term in prison when he was going to med school, to create that generational gap. Once again, they picked people from, especially the youth, right? That they want to sort of create a new generation. That's how, the indoctrination, that's how they call the propaganda. And then when he went to prison for the first time, he met many people. Actually, one of them passed away, Valerio Givenki. You probably are going to hear about him. If I'm not mistaken, Valerio was already canonized. One of the books in here is The Saints from Prison. So these very, very special people. And when we say confessors and saints, if you look at, what really makes the process of canonization. And I became actually very familiar with the process when I was putting the package together. You don't even need miracles, even though there are miracles that we can account for, but it's really the choices and our perseverance in our struggles, right? The choices that we make in face of difficulty. There are saints that were canonized just by making prosperous, obediently, without complaining. And I'm going to refrain from saying that because there is a process that people way more illumined. God knows that I'm the last person that should be here talking about anything of holy people like this. But anyhow, it is important to know, because even in our lives, what I've learned, by studying a little bit of theology too, not too many people know the meaning of the word icon, right? For icons in the Greek. It's actually mirror. We were all created to be saints. It's a very profound meaning. When you were looking into an icon, you were supposed to be looking at, is my life reflecting what I'm seeing here? Am I living? Am I making choices that would make me an icon one day? So it's, that to me is a very, very striking concept as well. And of course, he decided to become a priest during his first term in prison, to dedicate his life to God. And from the priest, really in delivering his 7 sermons, and I will give you the link, the 7 sermons, my project last year, they are in ancient faith. I got Father David Subo to be the voice. And you should please do take the time to listen. They are extremely powerful, very, very relevant to what we are living today as well. So I'll give you that as well. And that is the journey that we're gonna sort of walk a little bit. So let's look into a chronological summary here. He was the youngest of 11 children. 11 children. And what really sparkled, his interest in the faith? Guess what, mothers? His mother. His mother was a very, very pious Orthodox, and she was praying all the time. And that was the inspiration of his life. And even when he was, I'll let you read in here. He was from the Delta, the Danube Delta region, right? And you're gonna see here the prison that we saw in the beginning. Like I mentioned earlier, Pitest, Ayud, and the one that we saw earlier was Jilava, underground, right? And the political asylum, like I mentioned earlier. How did President Reagan even come to know about him? At that time, the government was actually, pretty active, looking to prosecuted, people that were prosecuted for their religion, all in alignment with our Constitution, right? All men are born free, right? And when right before they took Father George to prison, somebody managed to smuggle his sermons. One of the young people that were jumping over the wall outside of Romania. And those sermons were translated in 7 different languages. And the word got in here. And at the time, even Father Victor from St. John was working for the Voice of America. And he was really, impressed by what he heard. And he was also leading at the time, him and Marilyn, a couple of folks, that are parishioners, still in the area. And what they did is he was leading it was a movement for the persecuted Christians around the world. So they put Father George's name in that list. And there were congressional hearings, and a lot of what was happening, and somewhat Father Gheorghe made to the top of the list. That's how Vice President Reagan also went to Romania, Vice President Bush then, to negotiate for his release. And even when they took him out of prison to take him to the airport, they told him that they were bringing him to his execution. And Nasha Adriana, and they went to her apartment, cleaned everything, books, furniture, left her with 2 pens, they came to the U.S. with one plastic bag. And a lot of people think too, oh, you get political asylum and life was great, right? No, he came to the U.S. and he was working as a construction worker to make his living, right? And little by little paid $6,300 for Holy Cross in Falls Church that was falling apart, and started rebuilding that, little by little. So we're going to have a little bit of an intermission in here too, because even when I got to meet him, and one of the things that I told him, I look, oh yeah, and these icons, they're weird. I was used to the Renaissance, how we depict, Jesus blonde with the blue eyes, the cherubims that had nothing to do with what we see, in the turf of the cherubims. And I've learned so much, and I absolutely love, the iconography and things like this. Is absolutely profound. But I got to learn a lot from that time. And the second clip that I'm going to play to you was actually inspired also by some of the words that Father did. And I want to speak a little bit about his experience in the U.S. because we hear a lot about the prison, etc. But let me tell you the types of messages that he used to send. And I come in, I was not Orthodox yet, but I was spending a lot of time with him and, talking to him after work, coming from work and stopping by church. He was always there. And I said, you know what, Father George, this church is too small. You need something big. Now I know about icons. I looked on the web and I got some books too. And you need something really, really big. And I told him, and by the way, I just got recruited. We're gonna, my team is gonna go to, to Iraq. There are a couple of things that are very bad in there, and it's gonna be a lot of money. And I'll tell you, I'll give you half of everything that I'm gonna make, so we can get a fund going. And here I am, Mike. And he looked at me very calmly, and he said, Rosana. He said, I was not Maria then. He said, Rosana, church of walls is very important. The struggling community is very important because it brings us together. And when one side is weak, even when they are not praying directly for you, they hold you accountable. And those indirect prayers, we are all connected. There is an energy, a divine energy that strengthens us, even when the community is not praying directly for you. He said, it's very important. The walls, the church of walls are very important, but those walls collapse. He said, if you really, and then he went on, he said, and I hear that things are very dangerous in Iraq right now. If anything happens to you, are you ready? And I'm pausing here because that very seldom there was a question that somebody would come to me that I would not have an answer. This. And for the very first time, I gagged. I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean we're ready?" He said, "Yeah, it's all of us. We one day we're gonna close our eyes and we're gonna wake up in another place of existence." And that was like a very defining moment in my life. Then I started inquiring, what does it mean to be ready? What have I done that was actually meaningful? Yeah, working, we can do things that are, we can honor God, make him prosper, or whatever it is. But was my intent there, or was I just letting life drive my agenda and everybody else's agenda drive mine? And I will tell you, a very curious fact. Out of 16 people that actually left in that group of people that actually did go, 2 of them returned. And so it was a defining moment in my initial steps onto the orthodoxy. That's when I said, Father, I'm not ready. and I want to learn from you. What does this mean? So, let me play a second intermission in here, because I've already sort of summarizing, most of the other slides as well. I'll play the second intermission. Please pay attention to the words, because it was actually really based. Panahios from Greece, he has this production company, so let me give the credit to him. But it was inspired in that dialogue, and wrapping up what Father wrapped up the discussion with, he said, if you're really interested in learning what does it mean to be ready, and if you really want to build church, start building the church of God inside of your heart first. Then we're going to talk about walls. He literally refused money. And he said, what would have happened to me, in prison, if all that I had was my belief in the church made out of walls and big churches? He said, no, Maria, the true church of Christ is inside of our heart, where most times we keep Christ naked and starving. And we just reach out to him at our convenience, at our time, when we need him to serve us. So that to me was perhaps in my entire life, one of the most defining moments. So please entertain me a little bit with one clip. Yeah, so there was our little dialogue, and and even Elder Cleopa, once said, if you really want to live a virtuous life, you just think that the first thing you think when you wake up in the morning is one day I'm gonna die. Right in the middle of the day, you think one day I'm gonna die, and right before you fall asleep, one day I'm gonna die, but not in a morbid way. It changes your perspective. Like, am I going to really get upset because somebody cut me in traffic? Is it really worth at the end mission focus, what I tell folks, right? Mission focus. So those were really defining moments and transforming moments. The God works through instruments who sends people to tell you exactly what you need at that point in time. And he keeps knocking, but sometimes we don't pay attention. And those words that you heard and some of the examples that I used in here earlier, do you think that they sort of got to me right away? Well, what the question for, are you ready? It did. That was like when you saw that silence, boom, it really took me like completely, shook my structures, for lack of a better term. It's important when somebody crosses our path, even if it is a stranger, ask the question. There are no such things as coincidences. Always ask the question, what is it that God is trying to tell me? Am I supposed to learn something from this experience, whatever it is. But anyhow, we already spoke at length about this. Most of what I'm going to do here is just, recapping chronologically some of the vignettes that I have already provided to you. We spoke about Nasha Adriana. He actually married her after he came to prison for the second time. And he really, he told me many times, if it wasn't for Adriana, I will probably be in a monastery. He really had that monastic inclination. He loved her, we respected her to the very end. And he told me he was not afraid to die, but he was afraid to leave Adriana behind. And I told him, oh, don't worry, we will take care of her, Father. Don't worry about that. And in many ways, I think that, I failed, in that mission. But anyhow, she has passed away as well. And Elder Justine said, if you think that Gheorghe is a holy man, Adriana is 10 times holier. Even the people that were coming to her home to visit her during the time that Father was to prison were taken to prison too, because they came to visit her. The humiliations that she endured, and in here, after they were granted political asylum, the secret police came in here and tried to kill them twice. They had to, in the US, they had to actually hide. Yeah. So anyhow, you see his face in there, sort of smiling. This is the cemetery in Petrovoda, the monastery of Petrovoda. You want to be buried in there is for most of the people that went to prison. And here we are, exactly today. We are commemorating his memory. And I'll tell you another curious fact. She's not in here today, but one of your parishioners, I put the, this icon was actually, it's from the monastery of Vatopedi, right? We are waiting to put the here, like the halo, like Father was saying. You see him here holding the 7 sermons that he delivered that got him in prison. And you can see also the striped prison uniform, right? And I put this in the back of the church. And one day somebody comes to me and says, I saw you putting this there, and I took one home, and I've been praying, and he's helping me. I don't even know who he is, who this person is, but he's helping me. Who is he? And I start talking to her, about him. And that's what I remember of him. And I'm sure that he's much more powerful now, right? He can, we should pray, asking just like if he was next to us, because he still exists in that, in that plan and in that space. One of the points that I have not mentioned to you earlier, when he was a child, he actually had a very interesting encounter. He went to the fields, and the entire field of wheat was completely overtaken by a very, very strong light. And he did not know at the time what to make of that. And he saw that a second time at the very same solitary prison that we saw in Jilava on Easter Day. that when one of the guards, that was one of the worst guards torturing him, came to prison on Easter Day to torture him. And knowing that, he looked at the guard and he said, Christos Avia, Christ is risen. And the face of the guard, as he described, turned like a face of an angel. And the cell was filled with light. That pitch dark cell was completely flooded with light, uncreated light. And the guard actually was scared too. And he said, and he, you know, he told Father, don't tell anybody, but I cannot not believe in God after seeing what I'm seeing here. After that, he never tortured Father again, but he told Father not to tell anybody. So those were the two, you know, the very two, experiences that he had. And he has no doubt in his mind that Archangel Michael, you know, really kept him alive in there. And for the third time, Father Leonid was actually at the hospital with me when Father gave the last breath. And very few of us, even when we were reading the Psalms during the 2 weeks that the Father, you know, was terminal in here of pancreatic cancer, we didn't need. You think that I'm exaggerating? Ask others that were in there. Father Leonid can witness to that. We didn't need artificial light in a room. And right before he passed away, his face started shining and like glowing. It not a natural light in any shape or form. But those are things that I actually didn't even talk about that until I heard Father Leonid, because I said I'm probably exhausted because I haven't gotten any sleep, right? And those times at the hospital, so that we don't keep just going back to Romania, there were thousands of people coming to the oncologic area in where Father was at the Fairfax Hospital. And I was extremely upset. I said, Father, you need your peace to die. Where were these people when you were cleaning the church alone, making candles, driving food to the poor? So I'm going to send everybody home. They're causing chaos. The police is here. It was total havoc at the hospital. Everybody want to get his blessing. And I said, they had plenty of time to help you. I'm going to send everybody home. And he looked at me very calm and said, no, Maria, you know, you need to remember the Easter service. Even for the ones that come in the last hour, there is hope. I said, no, ask them, tell them that I asked them to be orderly, not to cause any commotion, but let them come one by one. And he did not give his last breath until he blessed the last person who walked through that door. You know, and trying to carry on a dialogue with them as well. So those were, you know, just a couple of, experiences that were definitely not something from this, you know, from this plane of existence, for lack of a better term. Yeah, we spoke a little bit about Radu Voda, right? Those are, you know, this is him with his students. You know, when he came out of prison for the first time, they did not let him go back to med school. He became a French professor at the seminary of Radu Voda. I actually went into the classroom. That's him there. And the, you know, the 7 sermons, the homilies that he actually released were preceding Easter, the 7 days before Easter. So, you know, once again, I will show you the link later on, but please do take the time to take a look at that. And we spoke about that, you know, the message over there is really challenging materialism and atheism in general, right? And we see that coming in. And one of the sentences that Father used very, very commonly with me, especially when I used the word compromises with him, he said, be very careful, Maria. Compromise is like a crack in the windshield. The minute you start compromising a little bit, before you know, the entire structure is shredded and you don't even know where it came from. So he said, once somebody comes in and tells you, let's compromise, the flag should raise right away. He said, be very careful. Yeah, and this is, if you look on top, this is how he started his sermon. So he started the first 2 sermons inside of the classroom. The folks from the seminary told him, you cannot teach them in the classroom. You know what he did? He took it to the courtyard. I said, well, they didn't tell me that I couldn't do that in the courtyard. And then they told him they could not do that in the courtyard. You know what he did? He went even further out, and that's when people were coming from the outside, and they locked the gate so that people couldn't come in, and they were jumping over the walls to listen to him. But it was, you know, he knew that this would mean imprisonment and likely his death too. Yeah, so we spoke about that. I'm not going to. You know, I'm not going to go to details, but I will point out to you some of the scenes in here of the prison cells, you know, the beatings and the tortures. You know, I'm not going to emphasize too much on that. It is mostly what happened to him and how that has changed him. In fact, you know, through the course of our, you know, our exchange, I have seen Father angry only once when one of his colleagues that also went to prison with him. We met in Romania. Father wanted me to stop his chemotherapy. He said, I need to go and say goodbye to my people. And this gentleman who suffered a lot as well, he said, well, this country owes us a lot, you know, because we suffered for these people. Nobody spoke up, and we did. And it was the only time that I saw Father really angry. He said, you know, nobody owes us anything. And in fact, when you try making that trade-off, what really happens is there is nothing that we can do that can measure up to the perfection of God, right? We are really saved by, you know, by Christ who has died on the cross, and that was the philosophy that Father taught me. And he said, in our lives, you know, if we really build the Church of Christ inside of our hearts, you know, every single action that we do, even when we sin, it doesn't mean that we are immune to sin, but we know where to come back to, right? And every action that should reflect, you know, the presence of Christ in our hearts. So that was his philosophy. And just about the curious fact, one of the only times that I saw him, you know, upset, you know, he said, everything we have is a gift from God. We are just stewards of our money, of our time. And he gives it to us for our stewardship so that we can give back, you know, to others. That's you know, that's in parables, etc. But, you know, how often we neglect and we think that those things are all, you know, our own deeds and our own gifts. In '89, when he was actually allowed to go back to Romania too. He was already, you know, exercising his political asylum in here. And when he went back, there were, you know, over 10,000 people that came to listen to him over there. And some, you know, there are some sad events that I have yet to write about that happened even, you know, when he want to go back and be buried over there. But that's for another time. We're gonna sort of celebrate his memory. It is him. You know, President Reagan actually received him at the Oval Office, and that's him with Barbara Bush too, and Vice President Bush at the time. So, you know, really, you know, he was. He didn't think that he was going to make, you know, to make it alive especially out of Jalaba. You saw that. And even when I was walking those steps, even though you know that everything is past, it gives a chill. You feel like really, oh my, you know, that place doesn't even exist. Imagine when you know that you're going to walk to a place where you're not going to come out of anymore, right? Basically walk into your grave. That is an Acatist. You know, he hasn't been canonized yet. We do have a blessing to actually pray the Acatist privately too, and you know, like the canonization process is in place. But we do have, you know, I'll send that link to you as well. I think I've already provided that to Father, but what I want to show you, this is what is on ancient faith. That was my project last year with Frederica Matthews Green, with, and they are all here. And you can actually download. And I got Adrian from Saint Parashkeva in Yash. The soundtrack that you're going to see here is from a group, Byzantine group from where Saint Parashkeva is. You know that Saint Parashkeva has a very special place in my heart too. So you're going to have this link. The sermons are very, very short, and I encourage you to please listen to them. There is a message in there for everybody. And every time that I listen to it, I actually get a different, a different message, and depending upon the context. So we've already spoken about what he saw in the fields when he was, just a boy. The uncreated light that actually touched him, and just. For the record, if anybody came to Father George and told him that he was a holy person, he would get very upset. His humility, he said, don't even do that. Said, Rosana, don't let my body be exhumed or anything like this. And it did happen. It was exhumed and it was found incorrupted. And it was a huge scandal, and they had to bury the body again. It was found incorrupted and really with a very sweet fragrance. On and all, what we have done in here, and what I tried doing, is not only showing, you his life and the tortures. To me, believe it or not, what is more striking is the influence that he actually had, even outside of the borders of Romania. And why asylum? Because even political asylum was like another prison for him. And we don't realize that, because if somebody tells you, even to a kid, we cannot go to this room, go to the other room, the minute that you can't even go and visit the place that you are willing to lay down your life for, his love, it was it was so deep for the youth that he saw being completely corrupted at that time. And he did tell me, he said, Rosana, the political asylum, I'm most thankful, but it was another prison for me. And sometimes we take our freedom also for granted. The only book that Father actually published is out of press. I'm working to put it back on press. If you look in here, the course in catacomb pastorship is when you have to hide to pray. We need to really take advantage of this type of blessing, because Father George told me too. He said, Maria, times will come where you will have to hide to pray. And in prayer, there is no other way of connecting to people like this, of connecting, spiritually, because in reality, everything that we are here is going to perish. Everything, consciousness, our spirit is the only thing that truly exists. So taking advantage of that, and every time, even when we are listening to a sermon, I was busy here and I was listening. Depending upon the context that we are going through, the message that comes is different. Even if you read the same thing, it has a different meaning to you. And I think that he wrote about priesthood, what priesthood really means. It describes not only his life, putting his own burdens and his own suffering behind the scenes and to help others, to reach out to others, but also the fact that we have that Good Samaritan in front of us as well. And how many times we turn our eyes off, right? Oh, I'm not going to look this way. Why is this person? There was another pit peeve of mine too, with people coming in and asking for money when you stop, right? And I said, oh, Father, they're going to, use for drugs or whatever it is. He said, Rosana, not your problem. If you have it, you give it and you forget. Or a lot of people saying, oh, I give this money to church and they use it for something else. And he used to say, the minute you give, it's given. You forget, right? You don't think about how people, because whatever they do with it is between them and God. You don't want to be in between. And he used to, we used to laugh because he said, Maria, God's job is not, I didn't see an advertisement out there for God's job. Are you applying for it? Setting, freely given, not expecting anything in return. That is who he was. And I hope that Good Samaritan, awakening that Good Samaritan within us, from time to time, at least, that is the key message that I would like to leave in here. And this is just a little depiction of the scenes from prison. My wonderful sisters from Diaconist. This is actually Father Gheorghe here, cutting his wrist to give blood to one of the prisoners that were dying. And when you see them, like skeletons in here, this is precisely how they were. And most of them actually died nameless. Not even their names we know. So please pray too. There is a canonization process going on in Romania too for the martyrs from prisons. I think recently they had one for Russia. We hear throughout history a lot of atrocities that happen, but most, unless you get to BBC, you're not going to hear on the news over here. They do a very good job of sort of depicting. Each one of them is actually explained in the book that we have in here too. This was the last message that Father left. I tried capturing here, and I released that actually the day that he actually passed away. For my flock, I leave these words: love one another as Jesus loved us, so that it will be revealed that we are the sons of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Sacrifice yourselves. Pray and be merciful to those in need. May the blessings of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be upon all of you. Amen. So this he did right before he passed away. I think that's the message that he would be relaying to you all. And he is here with us today, I'm sure. He loves people, and in our way, the only way that we have to connect to people, special people like this, is through prayer. And to connect to each other as well. This is him with Elder Cleopa. I don't know if you heard about Elder Cleopa before. It's a classic, a very classic picture. Three giants of the Orthodox faith. This is his mother. The roots of his Orthodox. He spoke always very highly of his mom. That's Nasha Adriana. That's my baptism. Look at this. It was a lifetime size tub inside of the church on Christmas Day, and it was like really everybody had a candle. It was absolutely wonderful. He was so happy, that day, and so it was. I think one of the very best times that I had. This was Nasha's 80th birthday too at church. So we used to, I used to organize those little things in the basement, and he used to absolutely love it. And the funny person that I mentioned to you, he's making candles. That I took this picture, when coming out of the Pentagon and talking to him over there, with an apron, like a pink paper. He had fun with everything. This is at the embassy. This is a very famous basketball player. So you can see the contrast, right? This is him at the cave during our last visit to Romania, cave of St. Andrew. The St. Andrew actually went by foot in Romania. That's where St. Andrew used to sleep, in that cave. We went there. So this face that you see him laughing and smiling, that was his norm. You wouldn't see him complaining, and even the history that he was telling me and those things that I was capturing, It was just because I was forcing him. Because I said, Maria, you don't need to relieve all those bad things. We need to recall so that they don't happen again. But don't get upset or anything like this, right? So, we have, we have many other pictures in here. I'm going to pay tribute to Diaconist. Most of what you see documented in here. This is a monastery too. In Diaconist, they do a very good job. This is Sister Mina, a beautiful story. She passed away as well. A beautiful story. She went to prison too with tortures. We can talk about her another time. In fact, we should have actually a series, a series over here of, the contemporary giants of faith and get to know them, right? This is Ayud, what I told you that they used to throw the bones of the martyrs from prisons. This was, to the dogs. And that is a monument that was built in there. This is the prison I actually went to visit. The last prison is fully active. They wouldn't let me in. It's still completely active. The entire city of Ayud, Elder Justine told me that is a condemned city. The entire city was created to sustain the prison, during those times. So to me, that should be completely demolished. And this is an icon from the Diaconist, from the sisters that you saw in there too, of the martyrs from prisons guarding. And this where the bones are, the fragrance of myrrh is so intense that your eyes burn when you walk. Is underneath of this monument in here, and the place where they used to throw the bodies is right next to it. And as you can see, the altar, it goes down just like Jilava, to sort of represent on the ground. This is a map with the gulas in Romania. Look at how many. And meanwhile, because of the horror that was spread in there, what happened is, the people that were inside of the houses, they wouldn't speak up. Most people that I speak with, they said, we didn't even know that this was happening. They didn't want to know, right? Because if you knew, you would be gone, or you would be taken over there as well. This is, Elder Justine. He was the abbot. He also passed away. He also went to prison. This is Father's grave in that small cemetery in Petrovoda. I'm actually planning a visit over there in Moldova. And this we already, we already went through, his journey over here, a little bit of the Holy Cross in Falls Church. The small church is still there. This is as breaking ground in St. Andrew, and just other pictures here, memories. This is our last visit to Romania, like I mentioned earlier. And it just sort of goes on with a couple of memories. He used to love children, baptisms, absolutely his favorite service, always surrounded by youth, and many other memories in here too. So this is really, his passing is really the beginning, right? It's the beginning for him, it's been a privilege being here. Even in my quiet ways in the back, I see how wonderful this community has been, how faithful you are. I have enjoyed your traditions. I have enjoyed your prayer life. And I wish you my very best. I ask you to keep me in your prayers, to keep the glorification of the martyrs from prison in your prayers. Is not that they deserve, that they should be glorified. To God, he knows who his saints are. He already, to me, I have, God forgive me, all the hierarchies forgive me, who really makes saints, the people who have lived with them, who have walked with them, they know who they are, right? And I really, enjoy our journey here, and thank you very much for allowing me to struggle along your side and to putting up with me behind the scenes.